The Burj Al Arab Jumeirah's marble floors gleam under emergency lighting as hotel security rushes down the corridor. Their radios crackle with urgent Arabic, then English. Medical emergency, penthouse suite 2847. But this isn't a medical emergency. In less than 6 hours, Dubai police will seal off the entire floor. Crime scene photographers will document every inch of what was supposed to be a paradise honeymoon suite, and a young British woman named Hannah Whitfield, who just 72 hours ago was dancing at her own wedding reception, will become the center of an international murder investigation. The man who called for help, her brand new husband, James Morrison, the same man who promised to love and protect her until death do them part. Death came much sooner than anyone expected. When hotel security arrived at Suite 2847, they found James Morrison sitting on the marble bathroom floor, his Armani wedding suit wrinkled and stained. He was rocking back and forth, repeating the same words over and over. "She won't wake up. She just won't wake up." Hannah lay on the king-sized bed, her designer honeymoon lingerie twisted around her small frame. Her neck bore dark purple bruises that looked like fingerprints. Her manicured nails, painted coral pink for the wedding just days before, were broken and bloody. The champagne flutes on the nightstand were still half full. Room service had delivered strawberries and chocolate at 11 p.m., just 4 hours earlier. The Do Not Disturb sign still hung on the door handle. But what detectives found next would shatter James Morrison's story completely. Tucked under Hannah's pillow was her iPhone, and the last message she'd sent was time-stamped at 2:33 a.m., just over an hour before James called for help. It was a voice message to her best friend back in Manchester. "Lily, something's wrong. He's not who I thought he was. If anything happens to me..." The message cut off abruptly. If this story already has you questioning everything you think you know about trust, then you need to hit that subscribe button right now. Because what I'm about to reveal will make you see honeymoon destinations in a completely different light. And if you don't subscribe, you're going to miss the warning signs that could literally save your life or someone you love. The comment section is already filling up with people sharing their own experiences with partners who weren't who they seemed. Don't be the person scrolling through in 6 months, wishing you'd been part of this community from the beginning. 3 weeks before Hannah Whitfield died in that Dubai hotel suite, she was the happiest she'd ever been. At 26, she had everything going for her: a successful career as a pediatric nurse at Manchester Children's Hospital, a close-knit family who adored her, and what she believed was the love of her life. Hannah wasn't the type to fall for just anyone. Her friends described her as cautious, maybe even a bit paranoid when it came to dating. She'd been burned before by a cheating ex-boyfriend during university, and since then she'd kept her guard up. Her flatmate Lily used to joke that Hannah ran background checks on guys before agreeing to second dates. So when Hannah met James Morrison at a charity gala in October 2023, everyone was surprised by how quickly she fell for him. James was everything Hannah usually avoided: charming, almost too smooth, with stories that seemed too good to be true. He claimed to run his own import-export business, splitting his time between London and Dubai. He drove a Porsche, wore Rolex watches, and always picked up the tab at expensive restaurants. But there was something about the way he looked at Hannah that made her friends uncomfortable. Lily would later tell police that James studied Hannah like he was memorizing her habits, her weaknesses, her dreams. "It wasn't romantic," Lily testified. "It was calculated." Hannah's family had reservations too. Her father, a retired police sergeant from Greater Manchester, did some digging into James's background. What he found, or rather, what he didn't find, worried him. James Morrison's business had no online presence beyond a basic website created just months before he met Hannah. His social media accounts were sparse, mostly stock photos of Dubai skylines and generic motivational quotes. When Hannah's dad tried to verify James's business registration, he hit dead ends. But Hannah was smitten. For the first time in years, she believed she'd found her person. James made her feel special, chosen. He flew her to Paris for their second date, proposed with a $15,000 ring after just 4 months of dating, and promised her a honeymoon in Dubai that would be beyond her wildest dreams. The red flags that Hannah's family saw. She dismissed them as jealousy or overprotection. "He makes me feel alive," she told her sister Emma during their last phone call. "For the first time, I'm not worried about the future. I trust him completely." Those words would haunt Emma forever. Have you ever ignored red flags because someone made you feel special? Have you ever dismissed your family's concerns because you thought they just didn't understand? Leave a comment and tell me. Because Hannah's story shows us just how dangerous it can be when love blinds us to the truth. The wedding was small but elegant, just immediate family and close friends at a boutique hotel in Manchester's northern quarter. Hannah looked radiant in her vintage lace dress, a family heirloom that had belonged to her grandmother. James played the role of devoted groom perfectly. He cried during Hannah's vows, danced with her grandmother, and charmed even Hannah's skeptical father with stories about the luxury honeymoon he'd planned. But behind the scenes, cracks were already showing. The wedding photographer Sarah Chen later told police about a strange incident during the reception. She'd been shooting candid moments when she overheard James on his phone in a side corridor, speaking in hushed, urgent tones. "I need more time," he was saying. "The wedding bought me a few weeks, but I need the full amount by the end of the month or we have a problem." When Sarah approached to take photos, James quickly ended the call and slipped back into his charming groom persona. But she noticed his hands were shaking. Hannah's cousin noticed something else. James had been drinking heavily throughout the reception, despite claiming to be a teetotaler during their relationship. By the time they cut the cake, his speech was slightly slurred, and his eyes had a strange, desperate look. But Hannah was floating on cloud nine. She spent the entire evening telling anyone who'd listen about their honeymoon plans. A week at the Burj Al Arab, shopping in the gold souk, sunset camel rides in the desert. "We're going to disconnect completely," she told her bridesmaids. "No work emails, no social media. Just us, starting our new life together." She had no idea that James had been planning something completely different. What she discovered in Dubai would make you see this fairy tale romance in a completely different light. But what James was hiding was far worse than anyone could have imagined. 3 days after the wedding, Hannah and James boarded Emirates Flight 21 from Manchester to Dubai. Hannah documented everything on her Instagram stories, the champagne in business class, James sleeping peacefully beside her, the excitement in her voice as she talked about their plans. But what Hannah didn't know was that James had booked their honeymoon suite with her credit card, not his. When the bill for the $2,000 per night accommodation came through, it would hit Hannah's account, the account James had gained access to when she'd made him an authorized user for convenience during their engagement. She also didn't know that James owed over $300,000 to various creditors back in the UK. His import-export business was a facade. The Porsche was leased under a fake company name. The Rolex watches were convincing fakes bought in bulk from China. Most importantly, Hannah had no idea that she was worth more to James dead than alive. Just 2 weeks before their wedding, James had taken out a $500,000 life insurance policy on Hannah, naming himself as the sole beneficiary. He'd convinced her it was standard for married couples and had her sign the papers along with their other wedding documents, buried in a stack of registry paperwork. Hannah's family later discovered that James had also gained access to Hannah's trust fund, money left to her by her grandparents that she'd planned to use to buy their first home together. The fund contained nearly $150,000, and James had already begun the process of transferring it to an offshore account. But James had made one critical mistake. He'd underestimated Hannah's intelligence. On their second day in Dubai, while James was supposedly meeting with business contacts, Hannah decided to surprise him with some shopping. She wanted to buy him a traditional Emirati kandura as a souvenir and headed to the gold souk, where James claimed his business partner had a shop. What she found there would change everything. No one had ever heard of James Morrison. No British businessman matched his description. When Hannah showed James's photo to several shop owners who claimed to know every expat businessman in the souk, they all said the same thing. "Never seen him before in my life." Hannah's nursing training had taught her to pay attention to details, to notice when things didn't add up. And suddenly, everything about James felt wrong. That evening, back at the Burj Al Arab, Hannah decided to do something she'd never done before. She went through James's belongings while he was in the shower. What she found in his laptop bag made her blood run cold. Bank statements showing massive debts, printed emails from loan sharks threatening violence, and most disturbing of all, a folder labeled H Life Insurance containing documents she'd never seen before. Hannah took photos of everything with her phone and immediately called Lily back in Manchester. "I need you to look something up for me," she whispered into her phone. "James took out a life insurance policy on me. Can you find out how much it's worth?" 20 minutes later, Lily called back. Her voice was shaking. "Hannah, you need to get out of there now." But it was already too late. James had been listening to every word from the bathroom doorway. Right now, thousands of people are watching this unfold, and I can guarantee half of them are thinking, "I would have seen the signs." But would you, really? If you're honest with yourself and you realize this could happen to anyone, then subscribe and share this video. Because every person who sees this story is one more person who might recognize these red flags in their own life. The subscribe button is literally a lifeline. And the fact that you're still watching proves you understand how important these stories are. Don't just be a viewer, be part of the solution. What happened next in that luxury hotel suite would shock even experienced Dubai police detectives. But first, let me tell you about the final 24 hours of Hannah Whitfield's life, because understanding those hours is crucial to understanding how a honeymoon in paradise became a murder scene. After Hannah discovered James's financial deception, the dynamic between them changed completely. James dropped his charming facade and became someone Hannah didn't recognize, cold, calculating, and increasingly desperate. "You weren't supposed to find that," he told her when he realized she'd been through his things. "You've made this much more complicated than it needed to be." Hannah tried to play it off, pretend she didn't understand what she'd found. But James wasn't buying it. He confiscated her phone, claiming the battery was dead and he'd charge it for her. He suggested they skip their planned dinner at the Burj Khalifa and instead order room service. Hannah went along with it, but she was planning her escape. She'd palmed her backup credit card when James wasn't looking and hidden it in her makeup bag. Her plan was simple: wait until James fell asleep, then get to the hotel lobby and demand help getting to the British consulate. But James seemed to anticipate her every move. When she said she was tired and wanted to go to bed early, he insisted on staying up to talk through their future together. When she tried to use the hotel phone to call room service, he said he'd already ordered their favorites. The food never came. Instead, James produced a bottle of champagne from the suite's private bar. "Let's celebrate our marriage properly," he said, but his eyes were cold, calculating. Hannah pretended to drink, letting the champagne wet her lips but not swallowing. She was now convinced that James meant to hurt her, and every instinct she'd developed as a nurse was screaming danger. At around 2 a.m., Hannah excused herself to the bathroom and managed to retrieve her phone from where James had hidden it. She had just enough battery to record a voice message to Lily. "Lily, something's wrong. He's not who I thought he was. If anything happens to me, look at his laptop, look at the insurance papers. I think he's going to—" The bathroom door burst open. James had been watching her from the keyhole. The mask was completely off now, and Hannah saw him for what he truly was, a predator who had been hunting her from the moment they met. "You stupid little bitch," he snarled. "You couldn't just leave it alone, could you?" Hannah tried to run, but the bathroom was small, and James was blocking the only exit. She grabbed the first thing she could find, a heavy glass perfume bottle from the vanity, and threw it at him. It shattered against the marble wall, sending glass fragments across the floor. James lunged forward, and Hannah managed to slip past him into the bedroom. What happened next would be pieced together by forensic investigators from the evidence left behind. The overturned lamp, the shattered champagne flute, the defensive wounds on Hannah's hands and arms, all told the story of a young woman fighting desperately for her life against someone who had planned her murder from the beginning. Hannah almost made it to the door. She was just feet away from escape when James caught her. Hotel guests in nearby suites later told police they heard what sounded like furniture being knocked over, followed by a woman's scream that was abruptly cut short. Then, silence. James strangled Hannah with his bare hands, The medical examiner would later determine that it took several minutes, long enough for Hannah to realize that the man she'd married, the man she'd trusted with her life, was killing her in cold blood. When it was over, James tried to stage the scene to look like an accident. He placed Hannah back on the bed, arranged her hair to cover the bruises on her neck, and scattered some of the room service chocolates around to suggest she'd been eating before bed. But James had watched too many crime shows and not enough forensic documentaries. He had no idea that modern investigation techniques would expose every lie he was about to tell. At 3:47 a.m., James Morrison called the hotel front desk in what sounded like genuine panic. "Please help me. There's something wrong with my wife. I think she's stopped breathing." The Dubai police investigation began immediately. Detective Inspector Fatima Al-Zahra, a 15-year veteran of the Dubai CID, arrived at the Burj Al Arab just after 5 a.m. What she found in Suite 2847 told a very different story from the one James Morrison was trying to sell. The scene was inconsistent with his account, Detective Al-Zahra would later testify. Mr. Morrison claimed his wife had felt unwell after drinking champagne by the pool, that she'd gone to bed early while he took a walk along the beach. He said when he returned around 3:30 a.m., he found her unresponsive. But the evidence contradicted every element of James's story. First, there was no record of the couple visiting the pool area that evening. Hotel security cameras showed them entering their suite at 7 p.m. and James leaving alone at 11:30 p.m., not for a romantic beach walk, but to visit the hotel's business center, where he spent 2 hours researching flights back to the UK. Second, Hannah's body showed clear signs of a struggle. Her fingernails contained skin cells that weren't her own, DNA that would later match James Morrison. The bruises on her neck were consistent with manual strangulation, not a fall or medical episode. Third and most damning, Hannah's phone contained that final voice message to Lily. The timestamp proved Hannah was alive and conscious at 2:33 a.m., just over an hour before James claimed to find her dead. When detectives confronted James with these inconsistencies, his story began to fall apart. He claimed he couldn't remember exact times, that the trauma had confused his memory. But when they showed him the hotel's security footage of his business center visit, his facade crumbled completely. "I need a lawyer," were the last words James Morrison spoke as a free man. The investigation revealed the full scope of James's deception. Back in Manchester, police discovered that James Morrison wasn't even his real name. He was actually James Hartwell, a failed businessman from Birmingham with a history of insurance fraud and domestic violence. His previous girlfriend, Sophie Turner from Cardiff, came forward after seeing James's photo in the news. She told police that James had become obsessed with her money during their relationship, had isolated her from friends and family, and had once joked about how much her life insurance was worth. "He said I was worth more to him dead than alive," Sophie testified. "I thought he was kidding. Now I realize he was testing the waters." Sophie had broken up with James after discovering he'd forged her signature on a loan application. She'd filed a police report, but James had disappeared before charges could be filed. Hannah Whitfield was supposed to be his next victim, but this time, James had chosen the wrong target. Hannah's family refused to let her death be swept under the rug, and the international attention on the case meant Dubai authorities were under pressure to pursue justice aggressively. The forensic evidence was overwhelming. DNA under Hannah's fingernails, fingerprint evidence on the broken glass, digital evidence from both phones showing the timeline of the murder. But perhaps most importantly, Dubai investigators uncovered James's financial motive: the insurance policy, the trust fund access, and the desperate need to pay off his debts before his creditors took more drastic action. Before I tell you exactly how this ended, I need you to understand something. The only reason we know these details, the only reason justice was served, is because people spoke up and didn't ignore the warning signs. If you've made it this far in the story, you're exactly the type of person who pays attention, who cares about others, who doesn't look away when something doesn't feel right. Hit subscribe because this community needs people like you. Share this video because someone in your network needs to hear this story. The subscribe button isn't just for you, It's for everyone whose life you might save by spreading awareness. The trial of James Hartwell, the man Hannah knew as James Morrison, began 8 months later in Dubai Criminal Court. The prosecution, led by Chief Prosecutor Ahmad Hassan, painted a devastating picture of premeditated murder motivated by greed. The defendant didn't fall in love with Hannah Whitfield, Prosecutor Hassan told the court. He fell in love with her bank account, her trust fund, and her life insurance policy. She was never his wife. She was his victim from the moment he targeted her at that charity gala. The evidence presented was methodical and damning. Hotel security footage, forensic analysis, digital evidence from both phones, and testimony from witnesses who'd seen the warning signs that Hannah's family had tried to raise. Lily, Hannah's best friend, gave the most emotional testimony. She played Hannah's final voice message for the court, the last words Hannah would ever speak, cut short by the man who had promised to love and protect her. "Hannah was the smartest person I knew," Lily said through tears. "She figured out what he was doing, but she figured it out too late." James's defense team tried to argue that Hannah's death was accidental, the result of a domestic dispute that got out of hand. They claimed James had lied about his identity and finances, but never intended to kill his wife. The forensic evidence destroyed that defense. Dr. Amira Khalil, Dubai's chief medical examiner, testified that the strangulation was deliberate and prolonged. "This was not a crime of passion," she explained to the court. "The perpetrator maintained pressure on the victim's neck for several minutes. This was an intentional act designed to cause death." The jury deliberated for less than 6 hours. When they returned, the verdict was unanimous on all charges: premeditated murder, insurance fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit fraud. Under UAE law, James Hartwell was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. He was also ordered to pay $650,000 in compensation to Hannah's family, though they would never see a penny, as James had no assets that weren't built on lies and theft. Hannah's family established the Hannah Whitfield Foundation, dedicated to helping women recognize the warning signs of financial abuse and predatory relationships. Her sister Emma became an advocate for stronger background checks on life insurance policies and better protection for potential victims of marriage-based fraud. "Hannah was so careful about everything else in her life," Emma said at the foundation's launch, "but love made her vulnerable, and he exploited that vulnerability in the most evil way possible." The case sent shockwaves through the expat community in Dubai and changed how luxury hotels handle guest security. The Burj Al Arab now requires additional identification verification for all guests and has implemented new protocols for responding to domestic disturbance calls. But perhaps the most lasting impact of Hannah's story is the conversation it started about trust, red flags, and the danger of ignoring our instincts when someone seems too good to be true. Detective Al-Zahra, who led the investigation, put it best. "Hannah Whitfield did everything right. She was educated, cautious, and had a strong support system. But predators like James Hartwell are experts at exploiting our deepest human need for connection and love. The only defense is awareness and the willingness of people to speak up when something doesn't feel right." James Hartwell is now serving his life sentence in Dubai's maximum security Al Awir Central Jail, far from the luxury lifestyle he tried to steal through murder. He continues to maintain his innocence, but his appeals have been consistently rejected by UAE courts. Hannah would have been 28 years old today. Her friends say she wanted to travel the world, maybe start a family, definitely continue her work helping sick children as a pediatric nurse. Instead, she became the victim of a man who saw her not as a person, but as a financial opportunity. Her story serves as a stark reminder that the people who seem most charming, most perfect, most eager to sweep us off our feet, might be the ones we should be most careful about trusting. Love shouldn't require us to ignore red flags or dismiss the concerns of people who care about us. The next time someone in your life raises concerns about your partner, or you feel that nagging feeling that something isn't quite right, remember Hannah Whitfield. Remember that it's better to hurt someone's feelings by asking difficult questions than to ignore your instincts and risk everything. Because in the end, the person who truly loves you will welcome your questions, your family's concerns, and your need to feel safe and secure in your relationship. James Hartwell preyed on Hannah's trust, her desire for love, and her willingness to see the best in people. But he couldn't destroy her legacy. The thousands of women who have heard her story and chosen to trust their instincts, ask the hard questions, and refuse to ignore red flags in the name of romance. Hannah's voice message to Lily might have been cut short that night in Dubai, but her story continues to save lives every day. And that's something James Hartwell, rotting in his desert prison cell, can never take away. What do you think? Have you ever ignored red flags because someone made you feel special? Have you ever had concerns about a friend's relationship that you didn't voice? Share your thoughts in the comments below, because awareness and conversation are the best weapons we have against predators like James Hartwell. And if this story has made you more aware of the warning signs of financial abuse and predatory relationships, please share it with someone who needs to hear Hannah's story. Because the next Hannah Whitfield might be someone you know, and your willingness to share this information could literally save their life. Don't forget to subscribe for more true crime stories that matter. And remember, love should make you feel safe, not vulnerable. Trust your instincts, listen to your loved ones, and never ignore red flags in the name of romance. Hannah Whitfield deserved better, and so do you.